everyone. Thanks so much for checking out our Power Chats. Tonight, we are thrilled to have composer, friend, collaborator, Chaya Czernowin with us to talk about a little bit about her piece, Irrational, that she wrote for Loadbang a couple years ago, plus any number of things that we can fit in the next 30 minutes. So Jeff, do you want to go ahead and ask the first question?
Great, yeah. Welcome, Chaya. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about the title for the piece for Loadbang, Irrational. What about the piece is irrational? How is this Loadbang piece different from or similar to your other work?
Well, I don't know that I can answer the second question so easily. Of course, every piece is very different, but in some way I see Irrational as a sister piece to Sahaf, which is also a piece for 4 players. Why it's called Irrational will probably explain why I feel what's its uniqueness. This is a piece, Irrational is a piece that when you hear it, it actually sounds very, very rational. I mean, it's not a piece where you are lost. At any point, you know where you are, and actually it's clear what's going on because it's built on a logic which is quite strict. And the logic recognizes everything that was before. However, what happens there is that the 4 instruments become like 4 parts of the same one. And each of them is slightly moving that one thing into a slightly different direction because the 4 voices, even though they are melting into one, they still exist as separate entities inside that one. And so even though it's very logical, so to say, or rational, that strict rationality gets it to really weird places. And that's why I called it irrational, because sometimes being extra rational and extra, building things on top of each other will lead you to places that you have never been before and you would not like to return to. And they are irrational.
Yeah, and we really enjoyed the way that the piece brings the 4 of us together and the sounds of the 4 of us together, because that's something that's happened a lot with our repertoire since the very beginning, like figuring out how do these things fit, right? It's a weird combination of things, and I was so pleased that when we got the score to your piece that you had found even stranger and newer ways for us to come together into one sound. Every once in a while we get a piece where I'm asked to do something that I've never had to do on stage before, and Irrational is one of them. So thank you for that opportunity.
Well, thank you for being there and being so open to experimenting. I mean, it's very interesting how, as a composer, you get requests or you get commissions, and then the commissions bring with them their own inspirations. And it sometimes really does have to do with the performers who are playing what you are going to be writing. It gives the piece a strong input as to what the piece is going to be. And that is exactly such a case. I could trust you that you will go into those crazy places that I was underlying. Something like that. Yeah.
Chaya, I wonder, so I think when we got the piece, it totally made sense. We were able to figure it out and play it. But then when we got some time with you, I remember we had a couple hours in Brooklyn to sort of work through in a very detailed way. The piece, it really clicked and I think it made a lot more sense to us, but it also, I think one of the reasons in which it made more sense to us is because of the language that you use, or the language that you used. And it was it was metaphor, it was imagery, it was all of these things in ways that sometimes with other people maybe could have just further abstracted what we were trying to do, but it felt like it really clarified how we were supposed to be approaching these things. I wonder, when you're writing a piece or when you're working on a piece like Irrational, are you thinking in terms of metaphor or allusions to these very different ways of explaining the music, or are those things that come later, like as you're hearing a group play, or as you're hearing us play it? Do you have something then that comes to mind?
Well, I never think in a Boulesian way. I never think when I'm writing in parameters. I never sing in rows. I never sing in chords. I do not sing in musical, in musical parameters. I'm always, and I also don't translate. I'm like a hunter who has a kind of an image that they are seeking to convey or to enact. And that image is even not always something I'm completely aware of when I'm writing totally. I'm actually looking through that image, through the piece. I'm looking for that image. And I will maybe understand it in the end of the piece. So like understanding what is irrational about the piece. I have like something that motivates me, and then I start to hunt for it. And as I'm writing, I'm discovering what it is more and more, the more the piece progresses. The piece talks to me and tells me what it wants to do. And in the end, I get a more complete answer to that question, what it was. So I use words in the many, many books. For every piece, I have a book. And that book is not with music systems. I write a lot of words. I write on the music system pages. I don't have an example here. A lot of words. And that's how I learn about what's happening. And so that comes in the rehearsals. But sometimes during the rehearsals, you really discover things. And it's very enlightening that you say that, you could play the piece, but it actually was not exactly the whole piece, because what the score conveys is something which is partial.
Does that give you any pause whenever a group, for instance, rents or buys a piece and you don't get the chance to work with them? How do you think about that when it's like really in another group's hands without your input?
There are a lot of ways in which I think about that. So yeah, I would like to be in the first performance of every of my pieces, and I do that in the premiere. But I also always am very careful to have very good recordings of my pieces. The first recording of a piece is a point of reference, and others will listen to this recording when they want to play the piece. And that is a really, really important resource. But I have started, and I'm doing it more and more as time goes on, also to put some words into my scores. And I think that even Irrational has some strange way.
I like that. It's almost like a totally different way of approaching music. We're so used to getting so many notes, so many rhythms, everything is very clear, do this, do that, and I like the idea that there's almost like there's a word of mouth, or you're referencing it almost in the way that like jazz musicians learn how to play, by referencing recordings, by referencing what other people do. It's a very different way of working. It's interesting to think about also, like our recordings of this piece being a reference, and so the piece can have a life, and all of these pieces can have a life.
The idea of jazz musicians who also sometimes just get the chord structures and they know that they are going to be improvising on it. It's like what you get, you're very aware that that's the beginning of the conversation. And in a way, with my scores, maybe a bit more than with other scores, it is like that as well.
It's really nice. I'm a really big fan of following your Instagram and Twitter accounts that you have. And one thing that I notice as I've followed and as I've got to know you more in depth as a person and as an artist and musician, both here and in Europe and Ostrava and such, the photographs that you choose to post are normally about nature. And it brings this idea to my mind where like some composers try to like blow up everything and show you the entire universe of what they can do in every piece, these really big maximalist pieces. But in your photography and music, as I've got to know it better, it feels like it really focuses in on a detail and kind of shows you the universe that's in the detail versus trying to kind of blow everything up. It really dives into an idea and shows you everything that's there. I was wondering, do you feel like you have a really deep connection with nature and the way everything is kind of interconnected and the way that you write music, like the way that you see and pick these photographs and the way that you write music? Is there, what's kind of the interconnectedness of it?
It is all connected. And, you know, everything is connected, and I would add everything is illuminated in a way. You know, I don't believe in solid material. I believe in energy, and I also believe in shadow and light and in atmosphere and in all those things that are results of intentions and things that are more airy and where the atoms are very small, but what surrounds them is very big. And they are very hard to catch because they are not as solid as words which are like rock words, you know, quantifiable, which are very clear. But I think this is the realm where music can do a lot, because music enacts all this. And maybe this is also the reason why I'm not quantifying musical parameters, because I'm working on different frequency, trying to make things that are unhearable, inaudible, audible.
Yeah.
And things which are impossible to say, I'm trying to say them in music. And one way to learn how to do it is to really get composition lessons from nature, because nature is a huge teacher. Only today I talked with one of my students about a place where she was creating very unpredictable processes, and she was doing them in a brilliant way, but then the atmosphere changed in her piece, and the unpredictability needed to go to become a different type of unpredictability. And I then showed her an Instagram post that I just posted in order for her to see, which showed shadow and light on a wall. And the shadow and the light were playing in a certain way, which became almost predictable. But at a certain moment, there was so much light that the whole wall got kind of burned up with that light. Nobody could foresee when this light would appear. Nobody could foresee how long it will stay. It was a result of too many parameters. The light came from the trees outside my windows. The trees were with wind. My window was in a certain situation in regard to the rays of the sun at a certain moment. So parameters upon parameters create those kind of phenomenon that are not actually foreseeable. You cannot know that this is going to happen. And if we succeed to make music such as the unpredictability is amazing surprise, but it makes sense when you look back, then that's something I'm very, very interested in.
On the topic of reaching to nature or systematic ideas that are non-musical, I wanted to ask you about, you described, I heard your incredible piece for Jack Quartet and this huge speaker array that was done in this very special version at Domena Center. And there was some part of it that I spoke with you afterwards that reminded me of Irrational. And you mentioned that, but they're very different because one piece is a hot piece and one piece is a cold piece. And I still sort of want to know exactly what that means for you. Can you categorize many of your pieces in that way? Do they have that, you know, you're talking about sort of parameters and atoms and small particles and things and like energies. Do you think in hot and cold?
I think what I meant back then in terms of hidden being a cold, because for sure hidden was the cold piece and irrational was the hot piece, even though I absolutely don't remember this conversation. But the coldness had to do with some kind of passivity on my part. And the heat is the heat of acting and of energy and of being active. That is what, I don't know if that makes sense, but in my mind it does, that's what it was referring to. Hidden is a piece where I really sat back. And it was almost like a kind of hibernation, and the piece was happening in the space around me. And the only thing I needed to do was not to move too much so that I don't blow the spell. So I really needed to not touch that piece and not, it's an anti-Beethovenian piece in that sense. You know, you cannot intervene, you do not want to direct it, you do not want to tell it what to do, you just allow it to make it sing, and you are trying to be the best watcher and really see how much you can catch from what is happening. That's hidden. Irrational is intervening on every, because in irrational, as I explained, it's almost like four people are kind of all under the same blanket, and each of them wants to drag it to another place, even though from the outside it looked like one object.
This sounds like when we're on tour. Yeah, it's when we only have one room at the Days Inn.
It's also another beautiful metaphor that's going to be helpful the next time we start rehearsing the piece again.
Yeah, I hope so. Anyway, but because of that kind of tension between the four instruments and constant unclarity of who is going to mate with who and who is going to be an individual for how long and so on, because of that constant four-log, not dialogue, but quarter-log, the piece is a piece of 1,000 interventions. And every moment somebody else is annoying the others and leading very, very microscopically so that it's leading to a different place.
Now that we know that Irrational is the hot piece, I wanted to talk about your opera, Infinite Now. We recently found out that it was made available to view on YouTube. And we also realized that it was written around the same time as Irrational. So we wanted to know if there are any connections or common ideas, threads between these two pieces.
Well, thank you so much for mentioning Infinite Now. I'm so happy that it is, you know, that all my collaborators and everybody that took part in this huge, monstrous production agreed to actually have it for free on Opera Vision. I really am very happy about it. And I discovered actually today that 8,500 views are already there, which is really quite amazing for a new opera. So this is my plug to everybody who is watching this. Please go and watch it. The pieces were not exactly written in the same time. Infinite Now's premiere was in April 2017. And Irrational was written in the last months of 2000, oh, it was 2017-18, right? Oh, it's not so far away, only there is another opera that was on the way. So yeah, my time span is a little bit, okay, so it was not so far away. I can tell you this, when you write very large pieces, like Infinite Now is 2.5 hours long, and Heart Chamber, which I wrote afterward, is an hour and a half. And then in between them, there was a piece which is called Guardian, which is also close to half an hour, which we'll hear in Oslo. When you write, sorry?
That's a beautiful piece.
Thank you. When you write those long pieces, you know, for me, every piece is like I'm moving to a house, or like I'm like a snail, and those pieces are my snail, where I'm the worm. Not a very nice image, but it's very true. So with every piece, you live inside it. And the big pieces, it's like you are living in this huge mansion, which needs cleaning, and it's like you always have to be aware of all the expense, and outside there is a huge garden that goes many miles. So it's like carrying on your back or being in a very, very large area. And it takes a lot of energy, actually, because you are maintaining it. And you really crave the spontaneity and just the sheer enjoyment of a moment of a short piece. And Irrational was exactly that. It was such a fun and joy to write something that was so crazy and could do whatever it didn't have, you know, all these huge miles of area. It didn't have to be so responsible. And there were also all the houses of the people that will come to live there. And no, nothing like that. It's just, maybe it's even a motorcycle that I just go on and I can go anywhere I want. And it's a motorcycle that you can sleep in for some reason. So it's a house, but it moves. And that feeling of the movement and energy and enjoyment of the moment and enjoyment of the spontaneity of the moment, that's something that I love in small pieces.
I know we're sort of in like this is a hard right turn. But I know that we're like kind of in a little bit of a different phase, it feels like, in the quarantine situation with school starting. It's like it's still very weird, but now it's a different kind of weird. I wonder, since this started, what have you been working on recently? Did you take a break, or have you been sort of working in terms of on your music? Have you been working straight through?
I've been working by far more than normal. So, you know, this is a crazy time politically. What we've experienced, what we are experiencing here in the States is unbelievable. And in addition, you know, I was following and knew about systematic racism, but the last months just made so many things more apparent, and you know, sometimes you just want to scream from frustration because one doesn't understand how so many people want something to change, and the system actually is really not allowing it. And there are so many frustrations that are connected to that. And I'm also an Israeli, and in Israel, a lot of things are going on, which are partly equivalent and partly very different, but there is so much energy of frustration, and one I'm not a political activist in the sense that, for example, I could not go to the demonstration because we have some health situation at home that we have to take a lot of care of. So I actually have not been in any building other than my own house since March. But yeah, so how does one deal with all this? The way that I found is for me, the best way to maintain my mental health is I'm putting it all in my work, and I am just letting my work be alive in a way where, you know, I do what I can in terms of the political things from my position, contribute here, contribute there, making some things more here. That's all I can do. I'm trying to do the best I can in that way, but I think that I try to also contribute to our world, the new music world, by being present and constantly working and making sure that people know that it's alive, you know. We are working, we are all working, we exist, and even though we are endangered species, as I always say, we are not yet taken away from that earth. We have existence, and it means something, and it makes a difference just because it exists. So.
Do you find these ideas then like working their way directly into your work?
Well, I must say that the frustration has really kind of coagulated into a piece that I will write. It's waiting for me. It's going to be an orchestral piece with voice, and the orchestra will be recorded, and the name of the piece is No, and it's the same singer who is going to scream no, and the recording will scream no, and no, and no, and it's going to be a very strongly political piece, as well as some other pieces where it is finding a very direct connection to some of my music. The last months are going to, I'm writing a piece for choir and for Jack Quartet. This is a long piece, like 50 minutes long, 40, 50. And there will be their sentences from very different sources, but one of them from the sister of George Floyd, for example. He was never a stranger. That sentence is going to be in my piece. So yes, absolutely.
That's really wonderful. I mean, wonderful in that I can't wait to hear those pieces. Not that you know, of course, consider all things considered. So Chaya, thanks so much for taking time to do this with us. This has been and continues to be a really fun project. And again, just sort of a way that it's like an excuse to get to hang out and chat in this crazy time, and hopefully offer something to, again, the greater new music community. When we can't all be in the same place playing, at least we can get together and chat. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do this with us.
Thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure and very lovely to see you all again.
Yeah,
I hope you are doing well.
And we'll see you. We will see you hopefully the next time we'll be in the recording studio.
Exactly.
To do this recording
I'm
of Irrational.
so looking forward to it.
We can all hop in our motorcycle that's a house together, and it's gonna be great.
But then we will start pushing and pulling. We will not get anywhere. All right.
Thank
Lovely
you so
to
much.
see you all, and thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for watching, everyone.
Bye.
Oh, thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you.